Hello, I'm Chris London. I've recorded this video to go through some of the ways we find with our clients are best at converting landscaping inquiries into sales. So some of the tricks and techniques, if you like, that our most successful clients are doing. First of all, it's worth understanding the steps to making a sale. So really there are six parts to it. And this is in terms of a homeowner. There's the thinking period before they actually make contact, making an inquiry through the website, the first contact they have with you, the site visit, the quote, and the follow-up. And I'll go through these steps in a bit more detail, but this is really the process between, wanting to have the garden, the driveway redone, and actually going through the process of getting a visit, getting a quote, and what happens in terms of the sort of the follow-up, persuading them to say yes. For most of our clients, the ideal customer is probably in their 40s to 60s, mainly because a lot of our clients are targeting higher value work, the more profitable work. They're not looking to be the cheapest. They're looking to have a good profit margin in everything they do. Obviously, they're a homeowner, relatively wealthy. Typically, they're fairly cautious in how they spend their money. Partly that's down to being a bit wealthier. Partly it's due to the age. And we do find that inquiries are generally about 60% female led. So the first inquiry comes in from a lady, whether married, partners living together, whatever. But we do find there is a bit of a trend there in terms of the initial inquiry. So this is fairly typical for most of the companies that we work with. In terms of turning an inquiry into a customer, or I suppose turning a sort of a site visit and quote into a customer, the ideal we find is about 1 in 3, about 30 to 35% of quotes turning into actual customers. If the conversion is a bit low, typically 1 out of say 5, often it's the case of either seeing the wrong people, seeing people that are never going to go ahead because they don't have the budget, or not really following up the sale properly. If the conversion is too good, more than 1 out of 2 going ahead, generally it's because there's overqualification, checking on the phone that they can afford it, how much money they've got to spend, etc., rather than sort of using any persuasion when visiting somebody, or because the prices are too low. So, they're quoting too low a price and therefore winning customers. So with our clients, really the goal is around about 1 in 3 of their quotes are turning into work, and then things are generally about right. Clearly it takes time and effort to get to this sort of ideal conversion. There's lots of different factors involved, but this is where we're sort of targeting with them. So the actual process then of going through those steps between making an inquiry and actually becoming a customer. First of all, for most people there is a thinking period. There's that time before they make an inquiry, because with most, if not all, landscaping projects, there's a want to do something, there's not a need. So if the garden doesn't get redone this year, the patio doesn't get relaid, it's not the end of the world. If there's a plumbing problem and the kitchen's flooded, then that's a need. You need a plumber around as quickly as possible to fix it. The garden, though, is more of a want. It's very much a desire-based purchase for most people. They want to have a lovely garden, they want to have a patio area, outdoor kitchen, whatever it is, and they need to persuade themselves that it isn't something that they want and desire, it's something that they actually need. If we don't get a lovely garden, then our life won't be as good, the quality of the life won't be as good, we won't be able to have those family barbecues, friends over, all that kind of stuff. During this thinking period, which often goes on for months or years, particularly for the larger projects, there'll be sort of multiple touches with you without you realizing. So they'll come into the website several times, they'll look at social media, they'll be looking at your past projects, they'll be checking your reviews, they'll be finding out about you. So they need to come across you multiple times in multiple ways and always get a strong positive impression about your company, what you do, how you work, etc. And as I said, it's often a couple of years that someone will be thinking about having their garden done before they actually get in touch with that initial inquiry. The inquiry itself, looking at it from the customer's perspective, there's a lot going on there in their mind. There's a fear of making an inquiry, a fear of contacting a company that they don't know in any way. There's obviously the worries about wasting money. We might get ripped off. We might, spend a lot of money and not get what we want. We could use it for something else instead. We could spend it on a holiday. We could spend it on a new car, whatever it may be. There's all these sort of fears and worries that go through their heads before they make that initial inquiry. Clearly, there's a lot of disreputable, dishonest companies around. So there's that worry that we'll pick one of those and we'll get ripped off. They'll put some walls in and the walls will fall over, things like that. Obviously, there's bad people in this industry as in any industry, and a lot of people have a natural fear of strangers, of contacting a stranger. So there's a lot of worries that go into making an inquiry that your homeowner's got to overcome before they pick up the phone, before they fill in a contact form or send you an email. They've got to get over all of these things after they've spent a year or two thinking about it to make that first inquiry. The first contact with you really is one of four ways. They phone you, they fill in a contact form, they message, either email, text message, or in person. You're working at one of the neighbours and they walk up and say, hello, we're down the road, we're looking at getting our garden done. So there's four main ways someone will get in touch, and they'll make that first contact at the point where they're most excited about doing something. So they've thought about it for a while, they've overcome all the fears and worries, etc., and now they're at that point of maximum excitement about transforming their garden, and that's when they're getting in touch with you. So it's very, very important to get a fast response as soon as possible after they've filled in a contact form, to get back to them, to reach out to them, partly so that they don't have time to contact anybody else. People will often contact multiple companies. If they send out a contact form, no one replies to them, they'll do another one for another company, no one replies, and they'll reach out to several of them. So that fast response is key. If they phone and it goes to answer phone, phoning them back quickly. If they fill in a contact form or they message via email or whatever, phone is definitely the best one. Get them on the phone talking as quickly as possible. If you email, you've lost some of that impetus. There's a danger that emails will end up in a spam folder rather than being read. So that first bit of contact, and getting some kind of a commitment from them as to what's going to happen next. Now, that commitment may be they'll send you some photos. That commitment may be that you'll go out and visit them. It could be something else, but getting some kind of a commitment to a next step as early as possible, because from the homeowner's perspective, when they've made a decision, then they can forget about it and leave it until the next thing happens. So they've made a decision to get in touch first of all. Then when you've contacted them back, they've made another decision, which is, when I get home from work, I'll take some photos, or you're going to come and visit me next Tuesday and we'll have a look at the garden together and I'll tell you what I'm looking for. But once they've made that decision, then they stop thinking about it and contacting others, searching on Google, etc., for alternative suppliers. They're happy because they've made that first step. Let's see what happens next. The site visit itself is obviously key. It's that chance to make a very, very strong face-to-face impression. Phone before is well worth it. We recommend that to all clients. Is confirm on the phone before turning up. Make sure they're definitely there before a wasted journey. Also, it overcomes any last sort of worries they've got about you, that they're meeting the stranger that's coming along. A pleasant phone call. Hi, Fred, I'm just about to leave. I'll be there with you in half an hour. Looking forward to seeing you and hearing about what you're looking for. Confirming all decision makers are there. So the worst thing, obviously, is you turn up and either the husband or the wife or whomever isn't there, and you're talking to one person. Really, you need to make sure that everybody is going to be there that's involved in making this decision, so that you're getting the right information. Often the person missing will be the one that's least interested in doing something, and they'll be the one that you most need to see. So getting them there at the meeting is important. Arriving on time, clearly, if you make an appointment at 1 o'clock and you arrive at 1:30, it's a negative first impression. They've put some time aside to be there at 1 o'clock to see you, and you turn up late. It instills in their mind a feeling that probably other things won't be so good, that you'll turn up late for work, things like that. Trying to take the role of a consultant, not a salesperson. So you're there as in a sort of an advisory role. You're on their side. You're talking to them about the garden, what they want to do with the garden. They'd like to have the barbecue over there and a seating area down the end, and you're advising them the best way of doing it based on your extensive experience and knowledge doing this for other people. So you're very much consulting with them, not trying to persuade them, use us for your patio. It's more, we can work together and get the best outcome for you with the patio. And obviously part of that is that we'll do all the work for you too. Having samples either on that initial site visit or a subsequent one, if you're going to go back and go through the proposal, the quotation in detail, is key, because you want to get other senses involved. You want to get people touching, feeling the materials, seeing what they look like, starting to imagine it in their garden, that porcelain paving, those bricks, whatever it may be, just visualizing it in their garden, because they've got it, they've got their fingers on it, they're touching it. And a key question is the money one. We always recommend keep clear of a question along the lines of, what's your budget? What's your budget? It's a horrible question. It's too based on how much money have you got, what you're looking to spend. People will often go low on that question. They'll be thinking to themselves, well, if I say my budget's £40,000, your quote is going to be £39,995. So they'll go low on that. If you reframe it and turn it round to more of an investment one, it changes the way they're thinking about things. They're starting to think about it in terms of, it's not money we're spending, it's money we're investing. It's going to increase the value of our home. It's coming back to the earlier point of trying to go from want to need, and in their mind making them justify it to themselves along the lines of, as well as it making their home better, their summers wonderful, family, friends, etc., it's also going to increase the value of the house. So if we do decide to move in the future, it will be worth more money. So it's not just an expense, a cost, it's also an investment in our wealth, our family wealth, our house's value. So the great question of how much you're looking to invest does change that framing around a bit. People will still go in low on that, but it just changes it in their mind. Once you've done the site visit, clearly the next step is a quote, and everyone does this differently. Sometimes with some of our clients, the initial quote will be for the design, and they'll be selling the design, and then they'll be selling the build afterwards. Others will be bringing them into a showroom and going through it there before they do the site visit. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but in the broad scheme of things, the site visit, looking at what they need, getting an understanding, measuring up is that first step. Second step is producing a quote for it. Worth remembering that after the visit, they're at sort of peak excitement. You've been talking to them about ideas. They've been telling you all these dreams they've got for the garden, how they're going to use it, all that type of thing. They're excited then about the garden and what you could do for them. One recommendation we have for everybody is never ever give a price during the visit, even if it's a simple project and you know off the top of your head what it's going to be. Never give the price there and then. Always send it afterwards. The reason for that is that if I can stand there and write down a figure of 25,000, well, it might be 22,000, it might be 21,000. It's I can as a homeowner, I can probably get that price down a bit because it's just a top of the head number written down. By going away and then sending it through, it gives the impression that you've thought it through, you've worked out all the prices, you've added up how many paving slabs, how many bricks, materials, etc. are needed in it, and you've given them a very carefully thought out quote. We often recommend going one step further and making it a precise number rather than a round number. So not 25,000, 24,737, something like that. So it is an exact figure. It is giving the impression that you've worked out every single detail to come up with that final sum. Send the quote within 7 days, really as soon as possible after. It doesn't have to be within 24 hours because people don't expect that, but longer than 7 days, and they're losing this initial excitement. They're starting to think, oh, I wonder what's happened to that. They're starting to wonder, maybe we should get another quote from somebody else so we can compare with it. If you can do it within 7 days, that is very, very effective. Also, well worth telling them when the quote will be sent. I'm going to go back, work on the quote over the next couple of days. I'll send it to you on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it may be, and obviously meeting that time, so making sure it is a time that is manageable and meeting it. So they've got some kind of confidence in themselves that the next step is going to happen. The same as the point before on the initial inquiry and a next action, booking in a site visit or them sending photos. Again, with the quote, is giving them something going to happen, so they're not starting to think to themselves, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm going to sit here for a few days and then get a bit bored and start searching online for other landscaping companies, get some other ideas. If they know that this process is underway, that you've got it under control, that you're going to be back to them on Tuesday at by 5 p.m. with the quote, then they can forget about that and they can worry about other things in their life. The last part, if you like, is the actual follow-up. So you've visited them, you've sent them a quote. Now all they've got is a piece of paper which they're looking at with a large sum of money on the bottom, and they're trying to decide what to do. Really, it's a kind of a 6-week thinking about deciding period. So that time you're not there any longer. That the excitement is starting to wear off. They've gone from the dreams of patio area, paving down the bottom, little seating area here, all that kind of stuff, to a quote with £50,000 or whatever it may be on it. That's a lot of money. What else could we spend it on? Well, we could spend it on an extension. We could spend it on a new car. We could spend it on holidays, or all these other things that could be spent on. Generally, of the two partners involved, if that's the case, one will be keener to go ahead than the other, and that one will be trying to persuade the other that they should do it, and one less keen is trying to persuade them to spend money on something else. There's an awful lot going on, and during that, and it's often a kind of a 6-week thinking about period. Some people it's less time, because they've already made a decision, they already know roughly how much it's going to be, but often it's a few weeks to think about it. During that time, a follow-up is key. You need to try and keep giving them reasons to go ahead. So give them things to help them make a decision, useful information, links to other projects that you've worked on that might be an example of things that they could think about in their garden. Reviews about your company that are telling them that you are reliable, you're a good supplier. Any useful information, samples, things like that you can actually send out physically to them, telling them more about your company, your team. There's lots of different ways you can provide information to them, and also at the same time have multiple contacts with them. So during this 6-week period, it's quite easy when you think about it to have 5, 6, 7, 8 interactions with them to keep moving them along towards making a decision. What you need to try and avoid, though, is the repeated calls, text messages saying, do you want to go ahead? There's nothing worse, and I'm speaking as a homeowner that has bought an expensive garden, been through this whole process. There is nothing worse than when you've got someone that keeps on phoning you and texting you saying, have you made up your mind? Do you want to go ahead? Because the answer is, I will decide and I will let you know. There's no value in that message. There is value in samples being sent out. There is value in links to other projects, photos of gardens, ideas, inspiration, more about your company, more about the team, reviews that other people left for you. All of that stuff is useful in terms of me as a homeowner making up my mind whether to go ahead or not, whether to go ahead with you or with somebody else. So these are the 6 steps to getting someone to make a decision, and ideally making the right decision. And it's worth understanding them all at a high level. The thinking period, often 1 or 2 years or longer, because this is a desire, not a need. We don't need the patio done. We'd love to have the patio done. The initial inquiry is at the end of this long thinking period. It's overcoming all this fear. So there's a lot that's gone into that. Why have they made the inquiry this week rather than in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time? Something possibly has happened that has spurred them on to getting in touch. So that first contact needs to be as soon as possible after the inquiry to catch them while they're in that state of excitement, interest, enthusiasm about whatever project it may be. The site visit is the chance to give a really good first impression of your business in terms of the physical meeting you, seeing you, your interest, your ideas about what they could do, showing them samples, showing them examples of other gardens, things like that. The quote clearly is a big negative, because we've gone from all the excitement, interest, etc., to this is how much it's going to cost you. And the majority of our clients are doing expensive projects. They tend to be higher end in terms of pricing. They're never going to be the cheapest quote. So if someone does get 2 or 3 quotes, they will be the most expensive of those, because they're looking to do the best job, best materials, and have a good profit margin as well. So when they've got that quote, suddenly there's all the what other things could we spend the money on? All the fears and worries come back into it. And therefore, the follow-up is key. During the 4, 5, 6, however many weeks it is that someone is thinking about it before they make a decision, you're no longer with them physically as you were in the site visit. And therefore, it's trying to give them reasons to say yes without saying, what do you think, yes or no? It's giving them other things to consider. Here are some projects. Here are links to our reviews. Here are samples, whatever it may be, other reasons to help persuade them to say yes while they're thinking about it. And the goal from this part here is to go from maybe 1 in 5 people saying yes, or even less for some of the companies we start working with, to about 1 in 3. Ideally 1 in 3 quotes turn into work. Because as I said before, if it becomes 1 in 2, chances are you're either a bit cheap on pricing or you're overqualifying. You're only seeing people that are definitely going to go ahead. You need to be seeing some of those that aren't definites and persuade them. Use your experience, use your ideas, your inspiration, and what can be done with their garden to help persuade them that you are the right company to go with. So I hope that's useful. There's an awful lot to it, and most of the companies we work with, the owner of the company started out as a landscaper, been very, very good at it, and slowly grown, hired more people, grown, and become more of a marketing salesperson. So a lot of these things don't come naturally. So it's trying to view it through the eyes of your ideal customer. What are they thinking and feeling? What are they looking for? And trying to meet them with the way you approach it. So not in a pushy, salesy way, more in a consultative, advisory way, helping them get to what they want, the dream garden, the wonderful life, whatever it may be. I hope that will be useful and helpful.